In the pledge, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, and we're just going to start the budget meeting right now.
Okay,
Fields, go to it.
thank you. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for everyone for being here tonight for our first budget meeting. As the board will remember, this tends to be an overview and just a 10,000 foot experience as to what we're thinking about as we start to develop the budget for this year. Actually, we've been working on it for a while, but where we are right now. For those who are watching at home on the live stream, you can feel free to email questions in communications@nccsk12.org. Katie is here tonight. She will be monitoring it, and when it is time for questions from the community, if there are any that come in, we'd be happy to answer those. Okay, so just reminding everybody of who our mascot is, just in case you forgot it. Our unnamed bison, soon to be named at the 75th anniversary. Tonight we're going to go over, like I said, broad topics, mission and vision. We're going to look at our enrollment projections. Our district continues to add enrollment. We are an anomaly in upstate New York, and we continue to grow. We're going to look at our state aid projections from the governor's budget proposals. Certainly, we don't know when the budget will finally be completed, but we have our initial run, so we'll share those with the board. Our initial view of the tax cap formula, obviously that will change as we go through the budget. And then what's inflating the budget right now? And we all know from our home budgets, a lot of things are inflating our budgets. So we'll talk about that and how it's impacting the way we're thinking about our planning, not just for next year, but really importantly for the next few years out. It's always important that we're thinking about sustainability, and then what the budget proposition will look like when we get to the ballot in May. So we always start with a reminder of our mission statement. Everything we do is for our students and to provide them all the opportunities that we possibly can. I think it's really important when we look at our mission statement to look at that second part about engaging in relevant and challenging work. We are always thinking about providing for their futures and not our past. The world is changing rapidly, and there are skills that they will need in the future that perhaps I didn't need in my past, but there are skills that I needed that will still be very helpful. The ability to communicate well, the ability to listen to others, the ability to problem solve. So we're always thinking about what contributes to relevant work in this day and age that is appropriately challenging for our students so that they can grow. But the thing that I will always lean on is the fact that our mission statement has always talked about their academic growth as well as their social growth and development. We care about the whole child, whether they're 5 years old starting kindergarten, or 13 or 14 years old starting 9th grade, or 18 years old and about to graduate, who they are becoming as a person and how we help them to become the best version of themselves. As a school district, we pride ourselves on leading by example that we constantly have to learn. Our world is changing. We can't rely on methodologies from 25 years ago. We can't rely on the past. We have to make sure that just like any other profession, a doctor, a lawyer, we're aware of what is the cutting edge research, what is best practice telling us, and that we're constantly evolving so that we can be the best version of ourselves so that our students can be the best version of themselves. Oops, I went the wrong way on this. Relatedly, when we sit together with our administrative team and our internal central office team and we think about the budget, I have two hyphenated words up there that really matter to me. The first is forward thinking. And it goes right back to what I just said about the mission. We have to be designing for what will work for our students, and we have to be open to new ideas and new ways of doing things. We all know since COVID, students have come back from COVID in very different ways with lots of different needs, and we always need to be keeping our eye on the future. We need to remain current and innovative in all the work that we do, and student-centered. We need to have students at the heart of every decision, that we're always thinking, whether it's a budgetary decision or a policy decision, how will this impact the learners and the children who have been entrusted to us? With that, we think about equity, we think about collaboration, we think about collective responsibility. I say it all the time, when we start with our new teachers, the job is hard. The work has not gotten easier, the work has only gotten harder and more complex. No one of us can figure it out by ourselves. We have to be able to work together to really think about how we're offering the best we can for our students. And when we think about that and we think about our budget in North Colony, how are we investing our resources to work to ensure the best possible outcomes for each and every student? Each and every student, while promoting intentional involvement, genuine efforts, and always leading with this idea of purpose, joy, love, and dignity for all the children in front of us and all their families. We have always worked hard in this district to make sure that we are using taxpayer dollars wisely, that we are thinking about sustainability, and that we are thinking about how we invest so that we can provide a first-class education. And I think this budget will be no different. We will be mindful of all the stressors that are facing our taxpayers, while we're also thinking about how we offer a great education, because we know that that is a game changer for students and their families. And maybe I will get the right clicker. One other thing to remind everybody of is when we think about being forward-thinking, New York State is now in the process of changing graduation requirements. So they have released their portrait of a graduate. And so as we start to think about what will high school look like when it meets New York State's goals of a student who is academically prepared, a student who is a creative innovator. So if you're sitting in a lot of classes where all you do is take paper and pencil notes and you don't have to produce anything yourselves, how are we then meeting the requirement of a child being a creative innovator? A critical thinker. We've never been a district that says we're just gonna test prep so we can get good results, because that doesn't make good thinkers. We'll never be that. But what are we doing to ensure from kindergarten through grade 12, this doesn't start in high school, this starts at the youngest age, that we're helping kids to be really good thinkers. My personal favorite, of course, effective communicator. In our world today, where it's so easy for people to misunderstand each other, for people to not be able to communicate across difference, what does that look like to effectively communicate in our world today? A global citizen. We know that the internet has changed everything. We are a smaller society in some ways because we can be communicating with someone halfway around the world. So what does it mean to emerge as a high school graduate to be ready for a global economy? And what does it mean to be, again, future focused? And the one thing that we keep hearing from all the higher ups at state ed, from people in colleges, from industry leaders, is the number one skill any graduate can have is they're going to have to be adaptable. The rate of change is just so fast with the technology we have that we have to have students who are ready and understand that this is what my job looked like today, and 6 months from now it may shift here, and I have to be able to adapt in real time, to learn, to ask questions, to collaborate and work with others in order to move whatever work assignment I have forward. The ability for our kids to be adaptable is really important. And we need to think about, how does a high school experience prepare kids for that? If it's a very traditional, routine kind of experience where we're managing every moment of their day, then they don't necessarily develop all these skills. So how do we build those in to the work that we're doing and build on our really strong foundation, right? Academic success, academic excellence is one of our pillars. It's something we stand by. So how do we promote academic excellence and all of these things that once were considered, I think the phrase was soft skills, these are now the skills that, this is what the state is saying, this is what every student needs. This is not a soft skill anymore. This is a graduation requirement. So that's exciting work to do, because that aligns completely with being future focused. What will a future graduate need? And we're in the midst of that work right now. And you'll see that some of our budget presentations, when we get to later presentations about new programs and things like that, will fit right in with this. And that's exciting. Okay, so how about the numbers? Where are we right now? So these are our projections for next year. And if you look on the left-hand side, obviously are the grades. Current, which was as of 2/13, because actually that's when I pulled the numbers because I worked on this over the break week. So you see exactly who's sitting in front of us in kindergarten. There are 392 current kindergarten. There are 376 current first graders. The board knows that we've been working with Dr. McGibbon as our demographer since 2016 now, and he has been giving us projections all along. So what I do is I look at, okay, from our kindergarten class, he believes from kindergarten to first grade, it will grow by 20 students from this current year to next year. But instead of using that factor based on projections, I actually use it based on the number of students who are right in front of us. So currently, there are 392 kindergarten students. Dr. McGibbon believes we'll add 20 students between K and 1. So next year, our projection is that first grade will have 412 students. There's 376 in first grade. He thinks it'll go up by 26. Next year, we project 402 students, and so on and so forth. So we look at that for all the grades. I've been doing that for a number of years now. His numbers have been incredibly, incredibly precise. I think I told the board the last time that I had looked, he was off for the district projections by 8 students. In an over 6,000 person district, he was off by 8. So his numbers are incredibly reliable, and we've been using this now as our projections. So next year, I'm projecting that we'll have just shy of 2,500 students at our elementary level. You can see it's 2,497. Do the same thing for the middle school and the high school, 6 through 12. 6-8, we are projecting 1,480 students. And here's the big number, 9-12, the high school is projected to be at 2,242 students. This is the biggest the high school has been. It is that bubble that we have watched all these years from the time they were in elementary school. It's why we did the 2017 project. They're at the high school now. That many years have gone by, it's been a decade. And so we see our numbers stabilizing in elementary and middle school, and we see that big bump going through at the high school. So if we look overall, currently elementary is 2,507. Next year it's projected to be 2,497. That's a difference of 10. So let's call that flat. It's just about even at the elementary level. The middle school, same thing. It's currently at 1,491. It's going down to 1,480. 11 students, let's call that flat. Here's the big difference. The high school is going from 2,170 to 2,242. That's up 72 students. So none of this projection comes as a surprise to me because I've been following it through the years. This is where our large population is. So we're projected next year as a district to be at 6,219. I would also remind the board that when we first started with Dr. McGibbon, it was before the 2016-17 project, and there was a time when we were thinking about, should we add on to the middle school or should we build an additional elementary school? And even back then, he was saying, you don't need another elementary school. You're gonna overbuild if you do that because this bubble is gonna go through and then you're gonna level out. And he said all along, I don't project that you're gonna have declining enrollment. I project that you'll slow down and even out. And that is really what we see. Our elementaries and middles are now slowing down and evening out, and the high school is getting that last bit of the enrollment. And so his projections have been pretty standard, and we are very much the anomaly compared to our surrounding neighbors. Some of them, like in the last year, have added more students, but no one has over the last decade like we have had the growth in enrollment. We've gone up probably 700 students in the last 10 years, and we continue to maintain that. I'm going to have Dr. Carey come up now as our Assistant Superintendent for Business. He's going to take you through where we are right now with the governor's proposal for state aid, and then some of the things that are impacting our budget thinking this year.
Thank you, Mrs.
Sure.
I wanted to go over this governor's proposal for state aid and talk about where we find ourselves today. There's some moving pieces of the puzzle. Districts that are in a whole harmless position, so these are districts that are receiving more aid if they were to run on the formula, are receiving a 1% minimum increase. We are scheduled to, as of the 20th of January, to receive 4.09% increase. That changes in the February database to 3.32%, and we'll go through that in a minute. The other thing the governor has said is that any of the expense-based aids, they are not going to be consolidated or have reductions. So this would be your transportation aid, the building aid, BOCES aid. So that's the.
Yeah, I'll do that right. Yeah.
What the governor's proposal also pushed out was a universal pre-kindergarten expense. And if you look at our original runs, we went up 419%. And what she has called for is $10,000 per pupil. We're now at $5,400 with no cap on aid or slots. She is in her budget. She's also calling for 2829, a requirement that districts provide a full day slot for any 4-year-old whose parent requests it. It kind of launched out, and we all said, "What?" So the aid that's provided, that 419%, we learned later on after the budget was provided that it was a proxy for what we might need. And I want to reiterate that there's not a limit on the amount of aid that will be received if you fill the slots. It will be paid. I want to also reiterate that this is a budget proposal, so the budget has to pass with this in it for it to move forward. We have been told that this is one that is not going to go away. That's what our constituent groups are talking about. That's what folks that are looking at the budget, that this is a push and it's not enough to be going. It will not go away. We'll see.
And Brian, what is the current reimbursement per pupil for UPK?
$5,400.
So she's almost doubling, and as the board knows, because of our growth in enrollment and our space limitations that we've had at our elementary schools, we use community partners for our UPK. So like everyone else and all of my colleagues, we were talking about this responsibility if it were to happen for 2829. Our community partners have been struggling to get teachers for UPK because when they're reimbursed at the rate of $5,400 per student, they can't pay a particularly high salary. So the turnover is tremendous. I will tell you, one of our neighboring colleagues, literally in the middle of this year, had to close down their UPK program because finally the community partner was like, we lost somebody, we got somebody, we lost somebody, we got somebody, and now we have nobody else. So basically with 2 weeks notice, they just had to say to families in March, like, it's closed, we don't have anybody. So this would be a big lift. Certainly 10,000 per pupil, if this were to go through in the budget, may be more enticing to those community partners. Having said that, when you look at our overall aid, we are going up, we are given $2 million in aid next year for UPK. This year, we expensed about $385,000. And we're as maxed out as we can be. So it's great when you look at the number, except given the partnerships that we have or given the space constraints, and this is true for a lot of our neighbors in the region, that is very aspirational. Like if we can get 50 more seats next year, that would be great. So we have this pot of money, but it can only be for UPK. And most likely, we will get nowhere near that $2 million.
And this increase, that 3.32% increase includes this, so it's sort of encumbered.
Let me go into the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're looking at here are the budget projections, the state aid projections, rather, from January 20th. And why this is important is this is what everybody saw in the news. This is what all of the groups sent out. And again, you'll see the 4.9% increase that I talked about. You'll see the 419% increase for universal pre-K. The overall 3.46, 6.7% on the bottom takes out that 419% because it just skews it so bad. So I took it out from that. This runs through our foundation aid, our expense-driven aids, and then our UPK and supplemental. And why I say this is important is, again, this is what made the news and made the headlines. The February 15th database is the one that really gets into looking at, okay, what's going on. So you'll see that our foundation aid has gone down a little bit. And that's because the databases that they present, the governor presents, uses data that is aging or aged. And by the time these runs came out, we knew that the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, had gone down a little bit. It was higher in the January database. We knew that our wealth locally had gone up as a state. So one of the factors of state aid, of foundation aid, is the wealth of the community you live in. Upstate New York has gotten, Capital Region has gotten more wealthy across against the rest of the state. So we see some equalization going on there. Actually, our student count went up a little bit, which helped us. So right now, we're projecting 3.32%, or about $1.1 million in foundation aid increase. Still, a decent amount of money, a lot more than 1% due minimum, but not what the district's been used to over the last few years. We're now on the formula. We're running on the formula. The factors are playing out, and we're seeing that in this run. You'll see transportation aid has come down a little bit. The reason for that is we take the original governor's proposal and we go through and we look at how she comes up with those dollars, and then we go out and we assume what we're going to spend for the year and project out for next year. So it was a little inflated from when it came out. Building aid, the same thing. We have one debt service coming off. BOCES aid, you'll notice previously we were negative $500,000 in this run. We are negative only $331. Same thing. BOCES only, the governor only knows what they think we're going to spend. They don't know what we're actually going to spend. So we do that work behind the scenes. I work with the different teams to do public high cost and private access. Software, library, textbook, hardware, and technology are a formula that's run. So when we look at this, without increasing the universal pre-K, we look at it as an overall 3.46% increase. Much of that's coming from foundation aid, as it stands today. These numbers will continue to be tweaked as different factors change, but this is what right now the best data that we have.
And I will say our foundation aid is, again, higher than a lot of our neighbors, so grateful, lower than what we've had in the past for a couple of different reasons. We are getting more than our neighbors because of the increase in enrollment. So foundation aid is driven by the number of pupils who are sitting before you every day. So as that number goes up, your foundation aid goes up because it's paying for the education of all the children. But it also looks at certain populations, and they are weighted differently in that formula. So for example, students whose families qualify for free and reduced lunch, they are weighted differently. Our numbers there have actually improved, which is great. We have fewer families than we had before who are qualifying for that, but that changes and brings our foundation aid down a little bit. There is more money for students who are learning English as a new language. Our number of English as a new language students has gone down a little bit, so those numbers all tweak the formula a little bit. So this is a little, to be honest, this is a little bit lower than what I expected, thinking of our growth in enrollment, but some of those specialized populations that feature into the foundation aid formula have changed, which is what's brought us down a little bit. Having said that, it's still a significant increase for us.
And again, to the fact that you can't, there's statewide factors that we don't have any direct impact on, wealth being one of them. So the next piece of revenue, the next largest piece of revenue, or the largest piece would be tax. And we look at what the tax cap formula, we predict what the tax cap formula would allow us to raise. So one of the big pieces here is the allowable growth factor. It's the lesser of CPI or 2%. So CPI this year came in at 2.63. The allowable growth factor has to be that or 2%, whichever's less. We're going to have 2. We have 2%. So the preliminary maximum tax increase would be 4.79%. And I say preliminarily, and it's the maximum at this time. This will change as we get closer to the end of March for an increase of $4.7 million. And if we run through the actual calculation, how this is factored, or how this is calculated, is you take last year's tax levy, you do your tax-based growth factor, which is provided to us. We then add in prior year pilots, payments in lieu of taxes. We take out the capital exclusions. That allowable levy growth factor is seen there, 1.02. We take that number and we subtract out any payments we will get in 26, 27. If we had any allowable carryover, which we don't, or ERS, TRS exclusion, which we don't this year, we would have added those in. And then we added our current year capital exclusion to get to the total allowable tax levy limit. Really what we're seeing, why the big change here is the capital exclusion. It's going up $2 million, 2.2 million. What that comes from is the $1.9 million of debt service that we have to pay on the ban for next year, the capital project, and the two extra buses. So then we get into the other side of the equation. That was revenue. Now let's look at expenses. And I will tell you this year, the last couple of years have been bad. This year, every which way we looked were just increases that were, they're just not sustainable. I'll start off with our TRS our retirement costs. TRS actually went down a little bit, which was great. ERS went up over 1%. Health insurance ranged from 9.54% to 20%. 20%. Third year in a row that we're looking at double digits across the region. Energy costs, which just so we work with a consortium. They did a new bid. This was before what we're dealing with today. Looking at electric costs of 22.84% and gas of 19.54. A couple things here. We had a terribly hard winter, and I don't know what this conflict is going to do to the overall cost in the future, but that's where we're at with the bid. So budget to budget, right? We look at contractual costs, we look at retirement, health insurance, and again, everywhere we look, even the physical insurance, which isn't on here, 7.8%. So it's the same thing that we're dealing with in our homes, we're dealing with as a school system. And it's something needs to change. I mean, we can't keep going up at these rates, specifically in health insurance. Health insurance represents over $1 million budget to budget, $1 million increase. So,
Right, that's not what we're paying, that's the increase.
Increase. So with that, this is the proposed proposition. It is about, the TBD there will be the amount of money that we are going out for as a budget. And it looks very similar to years past, it hasn't changed.
The big thing is there will only be one proposition, right? In years past, we've had capital project, we've had to take money from our capital savings account. So we will just have the one proposition this year. Do you vote yes or no for the budget itself? Very clear.
And this is our budget meeting schedule. So we're every Tuesday, the 31st.
So before we go to questions, I'll just hit on a couple of things. So as we talked about, this is the 10,000 foot view. Across the state, every superintendent is having this conversation with their Board of Education. It is basic arithmetic. We have two ways of raising funds in the district. We can collect taxes and we can get state aid. State aid is not as high as it has been. We've been very fortunate in this district to have had significant increases in the last several years, starting with the basic and annexation aid. There was a lot of money that came into the district during the pandemic as there was a lot of COVID relief aid. Then there was the gap elimination adjustment where we were finally made whole after a decade of not being fully funded by the state. So now, as Brian said, we're back on formula. So $1 million increase, as Brian just said, that's great, but that also will only cover the expense of how much insurance is going up. So that's great. So let's say we take that out. If we go to Brian's chart here, we still have all of our contractual raises, retirement costs, fuel and energy costs. And we all know this, right? I saw somebody in the audience when we said energy costs, right? We're all seeing that in our home energy bill. So times it by, right, a district this large. So we are a district that has been fortunate over the years. We have, we have healthy reserves. We will be fine in this year's budget, but I do think it's incumbent upon us as we continue to talk about the budget that we think about what does this look like years out. It can't be an annual year-to-year budgeting. It's really got to be budget forecasting for multiple years out. We have always been fiscally responsible while providing an outstanding education. I think that always is what is on this board's mind. I know that we will continue to do that. We do have to look at how we are thinking. So we are in a consortium for health insurance. We are in a consortium for energy. So we are constantly looking at ways that we can get the best value for the district as possible. But these are going to be conversations across the state this year and in the years in the future. So as we think about it and as we think about our students, their needs, the possibilities, what we want to offer our students, we have to balance all of this, and that is the story that we will go through with the board over the next month to show you how we are balancing that. I think we're all really optimistic that we have a healthy budget that our taxpayers will recognize is a fair budget while continuing to provide for our students, which is obviously our mission. So any questions from the board on anything that I shared or that Dr. Carey shared?
Can I just take a moment to introduce Mrs. Nardolillo?
Yes, you may.
Who is our budget chair. She has many years of experience in that role, and so I just wanted to mention that. I did not do that at the beginning of the meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Nardolillo. Thank you for being the budget chair. Again, not an easy job, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions on the skills?
And over the next several weeks, we'll obviously be drilling down into each of these topics.
Question about the UPK. Your conversation about UPK, you talk about community partners. And is that like a part where with UPK, it's not like the other classes in our buildings, like we can't source it ourselves?
We could. We haven't had the physical space to do that. So because literally every classroom is filled in our district. We may in the future, and we can certainly bring things in internally, and that's something that we'll talk about in the future should this proposal go through. But for right now, because of the space limitations we have, since we've only been eligible, what are we in year 3 of it? 3 years of UPK funding. We weren't eligible previously, so we have been using our community partners.
And then I guess my other question is, I was thinking when they talked about the full day, where you have to provide full day for UPK, that was on that slide. One thing I was thinking about the community partners with that is that I think that's also going to have a trickle down to wraparound care, right?
Our UPK partners currently do provide full day and have provided wraparound care, depending on the partner, but multiple have. So it has helped families, although in truth, those who've attended our UPK, for the most part, haven't taken advantage of wraparound care because it has been full day, so schedules have worked out. But there have been a few, and CYC has tried different things as one of our partners, depending on interest.
Have we, just as a follow-up, have we had to turn anyone away the last couple of years?
Any partners away?
Any parents who want their child?
Absolutely. This year we have 72 seats. At one point, our best year, we had around 150. So this year is a very low year. So we have a lottery.
Right. So what are the rates for the lottery? Like how many people are we talking about?
This year we probably had 140, I'd say,
So it's
probably
about
put
half.
their name in. Yeah, this year, in the past couple of years, actually we did very well because we filled just about every seat between people dropping out or making a different choice. This year, because we did lose partners, we've had fewer seats and had to turn people away. We'll see about next year. Our goal is to find more partnerships, more seats.
And we open up an RFP process every year so that we see if there are other community partners. Obviously, people are aware of what's in the governor's proposal, and so certainly if it doesn't go through, they get the 5,400. If it does go through, they will automatically get the 10,000 per child.
My other question, and I brought it up, I think, before, with all of these increases and being limited by the 2% tax cap, at what point do we start talking about needing to exceed the tax cap?
I think that's a fair question. We know from data across the state that there is not a good success rate for passing budgets when they go over the tax cap. We happen to have a very supportive community. I think in our original work right now that we're doing on the budget, we believe we can get to a balanced budget this year without having to exceed the tax cap. And that is one of those things that you don't want to do multiple times. Given that the formula is yielding something as high as a high 4, I think we could still get to everything that we want for our students and in our programs while keeping it in within the tax cap and a simple majority.
Okay.
But I do think that as we move forward, it is one of those things where we're going to have to keep an eye on that, because we want to be mindful of what's happening in the world right now. We know energy prices, now we see gas prices, we know what our community is struggling with within their own home budgets, right? And so we want to be careful about that. But we also know, and I know the board knows this, that every year that we don't go to the tax cap, we're leaving money on the table. And so that will be part of what we kind of work through over this next month of our budget hearings.
Well, and there is a multiplier effect.
There
so
sure is.
Exceeding the tax cap this year makes it much, much easier to keep it balanced in future years.
Correct.
And it might be quite a bit.
Correct. And on the other hand, if you go far below the tax cap, that also has a cumulative
Yes.
effect, and then suddenly it's very hard to run a budget.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from our live audience?
No.
Any questions online?
No?
Mary.
Okay.
Yes.
It looks like there's a.
Oh, okay, Mr. Cohen.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I have something a little awkward to say, and it's not meant to be challenging on the front end, but definitely on the back end. I worked with the budget committee. I've been following the budget for over the years, but I haven't been in attendance. But I was on the budget committee for about half a dozen years, and what I got used to in North Colony, and I don't know exactly when it stopped, but was a placeholder of fund balance. And the fund balance in revenues was never, of course, the entire fund balance. It was just a portion of it to try to balance the budget, meet the tax cap, the tax levy limit, and so forth. So the North Colony, and this is the part that I don't mean to be challenging, but the finance folks that were here were able to manage the various debt and expenses to where that fund balance placeholder, if you will, as revenue was almost never touched, and it went back into fund balance. So the first part is, can the fund balance, are you going to have any leftover money from this year's budget that can go into fund balance? That's part one. And part two, I got a great answer last year as to why we didn't use fund balance in the budget, and I don't care to explain that right now. But I think we need to get back to that model if we are sure we can have that not dipped into too deeply, because it's very important to have a fund balance. But so will there be any leftover expenses that can go into fund balance, and can we work our budget stronger to meet the tax cap by using fund balance as a placeholder, expecting that we will likely be able to have those funds remain and back into fund balance in the following year.
So,
Did I say that okay?
Yes, you did.
Right.
Brian and I both know exactly what you're talking about, so absolutely. So I will say, we are currently working through, we now, Brian, we always did a budget freeze, like after a certain time in the year, you had to stop so we could start to see where we were gonna end. Brian has introduced us to a new term. First, we did a budget frost, because frost becomes before a freeze. So we did a budget frost about a month ago. Now we've hit the budget freeze, so we can start to look at where we are going to end the year. We know that as we work through this process, that we will come to the board and talk about appropriation of fund balance at a certain point. As we get in our final numbers and our final requests, since we're putting the pieces of the puzzle together, we will absolutely be having to put fund balance into the budget. What we don't know, though, if we're going to be very truthful, is in the state of the world right now, and I went back to this slide, with this level of increase, can we say, in the past, Mr. Core would say, like, we're gonna use $3 million of fund balance, and then he'd come back and be like, oh, we only needed $1 million, and we put $2 million back. If these numbers keep escalating, we may not be able to say, when we put in $3 million as a placeholder, and we're really probably only gonna need $1, we may end up saying, we put in $3 million, and guess what? All these things continue to increase. We needed that. And so that's why we want to manage both, because you can't do that year in and year out, obviously. We could when we knew we could recoup, and we thought we could. So until this balances out a little, we're going to have to be very intentional about how we think about applying fund balance. But absolutely, that will be part of the equation, right? So we have, and I should have said that, we have taxes, we have state aid, and then we have our reserves. So you're exactly right, and your years of experience are coming through. You knew exactly what you meant. Thank you.
We have the greatest economy in the world.
Thank you. All good, Katie? All right, so I will move us to this. So next week on the 17th, we will be talking about facilities, custodial, transportation. Obviously, that is a hot topic as we get to thinking about the transition to zero-emission buses, as you well know, as well as instructional technology. And then we'll go to March 24th. March 24th is new programs and initiatives. Again, thinking about what are we offering for our students, any staffing needs related to our growth and enrollment, as well as professional development, and then leading up to the 31st, where there will be a budget adoption, where we'll go through all those pieces of the puzzle. Here's where we are, here's what we're recommending, and the board will choose to adopt a budget on the 31st. We'll have another hearing on the budget on May 6th, and then this year election is May the 19th. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Skills.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Dr. Carey.
Yes.
And thank you, Mrs. Gondavilla. And thank you all for being here. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you, everyone.
You got it already.